You're watching HCAM's Government Channel, where we provide coverage of the latest meetings and events happening in Hingham's local government. For more Hingham news, tune into HCAM's public channel on Comcast 97 and Verizon Fios 31, and educational channel on Comcast 22 and Verizon Fios 29.
Tuesday, February 7th, 2017, calling the Board of Selectmen meeting to order for the town of Hingham. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. We have before us the minutes of February 2nd, 2017. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as written.
So moved.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Comment from the public? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item of business, and that is to place a memorial plaque at Lynch Field, the field house there, in memory of David D. Pizzelli. I see Mrs. Pizzelli is here. Ladies and gentlemen, and Mary, just correct me after I'm through if I get any of this wrong. Dave Pizzelli was a public servant in this town for 41 years, served with distinction on the Hingham Police, and as part of that, many years ago, before Back River condos were built and what's now known as Lynch Field, he was actively involved in a police athletic league. It took one of the old buildings from the depot, rehabbed it with some other gentlemen. Ed Lynch, I believe, was involved in that, and made it a place for kids to go. A few years ago, we had a little gathering, and Chief Perrano spoke about that when he was a kid. That was a place where he went. So we thought it, would be appropriate under the circumstances to place a plaque to recognize the significant contributions that David Pizzelli, or me, my sergeant, made to the town for this very worthwhile undertaking. You can see today that many children enjoy the field and its use, and it continues to be a very enjoyable spot to go. And so with that in mind, thought it might be appropriate under the circumstances just to recognize his contribution of years past so that it just doesn't disappear into history. Mary, is there anything you'd like to add? Or?
I did want to acknowledge Chairman Healy and Tom Hoffman for doing what they did with the plaques, which I have, if no one has seen it. And I felt that he negotiated with the Navy and had over 500 children, youth, as members in a month. And I just felt that with the plaques, where they are not seen, they're in the field house, I would like something visible, and I didn't think that was too much to ask.
Well, that's very reasonable and appropriate under the circumstances. Unless my colleagues have any questions, I'd be prepared to offer a motion for consideration of the board.
I would just thank your husband for all the great work. I have two boys who participate in sports along with so many hundreds of others, and that's a special place. It's an important contribution, and I'm so glad that these plaques will be placed in a visible place, so those who didn't have the privilege of knowing your husband will understand the significant contributions that he made.
Right. Thank you so much.
Mary, I just want to thank you. I know that as time goes by sometimes, and you have new folks in town, it may not be on their radar screen about the contributions that he has made to this town. And I really applaud you, the efforts that you made to bring this to the forefront. And of course, I support your efforts to do that. I look forward to when this occurs, when the plaque will be on the building, so it'll be visible.
There's only one person that's unhappy. He would not have, he would not have had me, but I couldn't go to my grave and not do what I'm doing.
We're going to fix it right now.
Spousal override.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming
Pleasure.
tonight.
I'll make a motion to authorize the placement of a memorial plaque in memory of David D. Pizzelli David D. Pizzelli's contributions to the youth of Hingham at the Lynch Field Field House.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Good
Thank you,
night.
Mary.
Just give this up.
I didn't. I'll take it.
Did you see them?
I'd love to see them. Thank you.
I don't mean to interrupt,
No, no, no.
That's quite all right.
but they were inside the field house, so I wanted something outside.
To go outside.
We'll make sure that,
These are beautiful.
yeah, we did that a few years ago.
Here, can I pass it?
Sure.
I'll leave it with Tom. Thank you.
This was before. That's before. And he didn't do after. Which is too bad.
Yeah, I remember this.
You see my office. That goes with these.
This goes, I was going to say, I didn't
It was in the
know.
middle of my tax.
You want to put it on the board?
They're a little outdated. This one here is.
Yeah, that'll be the better one.
Yeah, we'll do that one. Coming back down. I think.
Plan, ladies and gentlemen, is to put something that would go on the exterior of the field house so that
Thank you.
kids and parents that go there can actually see how this all germinated from the early start.
So these photos of the early pre?
Yeah.
When he took it over, he didn't do after, which is too bad.
Right, well, we can see the results.
It's a beautiful building.
Interesting.
Nice. All right, now let's get on to other matters. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we continue our journey to the 2017 town meeting by continuing on with our review of the warrant articles that are going to be before the electorate in April. And the first matter is Article Q, application of the bond premium.
This is an article that comes about every time we do long-term borrowings. When we issue long-term debt, frequently the town receives a bond premium. That is an amount that is paid above and beyond the coupon amount or the note amount of the bond. So if we sell 40 million of bonds, we might get $41 million from the bond market. In exchange, we elevate the interest rate, or they offer an interest rate higher than the general market rate. And generally, investment houses do this because they want to offer maybe a 4% coupon when the competitive market rate is 3.89%, and it doesn't market it well when they take those bonds and sell them to other folks. Regardless of their reasons, the market will regularly give us premiums. And our practice for many years has been to take those premiums and put them in the stabilization fund and then use the remaining life of the term equally to draw down that money. You'll see articles this year for drawing that money out of the stabilization fund and to reduce the ongoing cost. We've talked over the years about how to do that, actually not over the years, but at the outset of this process, maybe 30 years ago, should we apply the bond premium to the first year's payment? And the consensus was that no, it would be better for us to put it in the stabilization fund, allow it to earn interest, and use it in usually 1/18th increments, because usually a 20-year note we only wind up issuing for 18 years actually. And so that it mitigates it across the entire time of the term of the bond evenly, and all residents who were part of that would benefit. It's significant because a lot of the bond premiums that we get are based on tax override debt, which means that the taxpayer is given the entity by virtue of a vote in an annual election the right to tax them above and beyond the constraints of Proposition 2.5 for the cost of the debt service. And it's very clear it's the cost of the debt service. For many years, communities would, and not this community, at least not the time I've been aware of it, would actually charge residents that 4% in my example. When they borrowed at 3.8, they got a premium, and that premium used to revert to the general fund. And here in Hingham, we started that practice about 24 years ago of saying, no, we don't think that's right. We think that should be set aside and used only for the purpose with which we received it. We had quite a few arguments with the state legislature about this, or State Department of Revenue. And then, interestingly enough, a few years after our vociferous arguments, they changed it and made it state law that you now have to do this. And so that's what this article is telling us to do.
Good question. Ted, it mentions in the explanation, it says, due to the Modernization Act. It seems to, it references that, and is this a change in?
You know, I didn't write this part of the article, so I have to find out from Sue, who couldn't be here today, what she means by the Modernization Act. I think the Modernization Act incorporated the Department of Revenue's regulation that they adopted about 20 years ago, requiring communities to account for this the way we've always done it. That's my guess as to what transpired, but I don't have an answer for you on that.
That was 20 years ago they did that?
Yeah, about, it was with the school issue in 2002, the first big issue we issued. I can remember crystal clear, the Department of Revenue wouldn't set our tax rate that year because they felt that we had to take, we could not take the bond premium and use it to offset the cost of the debt. We had to turn it into free cash, and we said, but that's circumventing the taxpayers, and that's the law. We said, well, we're not going to do that, and we passed this at town meeting. And then the following year, they actually passed a regulation requiring everybody to do what we've been doing. So I'll get you more input on the Modernization Act, and I also apologize, I don't have the exact numbers for you here. Sue is out today, and she has those numbers.
Okay, well, any questions from the audience? I'll entertain a motion to recommend favorable action on Article Q.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next article is Article O, Amendment to the Veterans Home Act. And who is here to talk about that? Besides, is Keith coming?
He's celebrating his birthday. Okay.
They're all here for the bond?
All right. You got your crowd here.
Hey. It's all good, right?
All good. America, baby.
Wait first? Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm going to start.
Okay, gentlemen, good evening. Can you fill us in on the amendment to the Veterans Home Act proposed article?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm John Buckley, 235 Lincoln Street. I'm the Vice Chair of Hingham's Veterans Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening regarding the amendment to the Veterans Home Act, which was passed unanimously by the Massachusetts legislature and was signed into law by Governor Baker back in July of 2016. The purpose of this warrant article is to provide financial protection and stability to town employees who are also members of the National Guard and Reserves should they be recalled to active duty for more than 30 days. Under the Veterans Home Act, these members shall be paid their regular base public employee salary for each pay period, reduced by the amount they receive from the military during the same pay period. Additionally, these members shall not lose any seniority or accrued vacation leave, sick leave, personal leave, comp time, or earned overtime while they are recalled to active duty. And this is actually something that Hingham has been doing for the last few years, and is one of the reasons why the town was selected to receive the prestigious Secretary of Defense Freedom Award back in 2015. According to our research, out of the 991 Hingham employees, there's currently only one person who would fall into this category should he be recalled to active duty for more than 30 days. The Veterans Council strongly believes that it's important to support this warrant article so that our current and future town employees will not incur any financial burdens should they be recalled to active duty to serve our nation. Thank you very much for your time, gentlemen. Ma'am.
Questions from my colleagues?
So this is a warrant article. Are we opting in officially with the legislation, or just trying to,
Yes, sir.
okay, so if we didn't, oh, go ahead, John.
I would just say, to kind of echo what John said, we've actually been doing this. The state is catching up with us. We started this 7 years ago. We've done it for 2 reservists who were activated, but apparently the Home Act, in answer to your question, requires that each town or jurisdiction, by virtue of a legislative vote, basically agree to the provisions of the Act, which includes many more things than just this. Among them, the tax bill checkoff that we also implemented about 6 years ago. So they're playing catch-up ball with the example we set.
Thank you.
And John, just a follow-up question on that, with the things that Hingham had already adopted, were those adopted by a town meeting vote, or were they just practices that were adopted? So, in other words, will this warrant article replace something that's already on the books, or will it just formalize a practice that the town has adopted over time?
It'll formalize a practice. With the first reservist that was activated, a member of the Hingham Police Department, we worked with the town administrator, the department, or the director of human resources, and then Chief Perino and Deputy Olson to address the issue. What was it the right thing to do? Everybody agreed it was. And we sort of formalized the approach that we used then again when the second reservist was activated. So it has not been before a town meeting previously.
Thank you.
Questions from the public? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for favorable action on Article O, Amendment to the Veterans Home Act.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, disposal of surplus supplies, Article P,
Sure, I'll take this one.
please.
So the Chapter 30B, which is the State's Procurement Act, allows for a certain disposal process of surplus supplies for municipalities. These are things that the town no longer needs and would like to move on from. A lot of times, if they're higher ticket items like vehicles, we would trade them in. So this doesn't affect that. What we're doing is we're enacting a local option in Chapter 30B, which is Section 15F, that allows for towns to provide written procedures to alter the Chapter 30B standard regulations. And the way we're doing that is by designating anything under $100 in value that the town administrator's office designates as under $100 in value, we'd be able to follow a process to divest ourselves of those objects. And that's usually, or it would be per this article, to designate or to reach out to other departments in town to make sure nobody else wants it before we get rid of it. And then the second item would be to potentially offer it, if we felt there was value to it of any kind, to offer it to a charitable organization. We're talking about broken down furniture, old chairs, missing wheels, 40, 50-year-old desks with holes in them, and that's the kind of objects that we're talking about. Right now, we're not allowed technically to throw that stuff away. And it's cluttering our attics, it's cluttering our basements, and it's becoming a problem. So that's what this is intended to do. Anything over $100 in value, up to $10,000 in value, we would still do a full public auction or sound business practice to try to sell the item and get the value for it. So that's the idea.
Question?
No, I would just emphasize something Tom said for the benefit of the audience, which is that really any town asset, I mean, the chairs that all our guests are sitting in, everything, we can't dispose of that without approval of town meeting. And, that's to make sure that all of our collective tax dollars are being given towards the town. But, the downside is that it makes it a little tougher to get rid of those things when they've reached the end of their life. So this is really what that's all about.
That's right.
Questions? I'll entertain a motion to recommend favorable action on Article P.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Country Club, gentlemen, join us. Greetings.
Hello.
Welcome.
How can we help you?
So I have a warrant article that we've asked for, the CCMC has asked to be put into the warrant for, to be able to purchase or replace 70 golf carts and 10 utility vehicles. What we're looking to do is, right now we have a fleet of 80 golf carts that were purchased. Some of them, 10 of them are, or actually, I'm sorry, 20 of them are 1996s, and the remaining 60 are 2010s, and they become inefficient and costly to repair and run on a daily basis. So we are in our 6th year of running these golf carts. We paid off the debt last year, and this year in FY17 we have no debt on the golf carts, but because of the inefficiency of the carts, we've had to spend a significant amount of money renting carts, because a number of them have failed and are unable to sell on a daily basis. So between the cost of the rentals and the cost of the repairs on the carts, we're looking to replace these carts, trade them in while we still have some value in them, enter into debt for that for a number of years, and replace 70 of the carts and keep 10 of the older carts. So we'd have still 80 carts, same number that we currently have, but I'd have 70 new carts that would allow us to be able to basically operate without ever having to rent golf carts in the next few years. And the utility vehicles we're looking to replace we're replacing 10-year-old John Deere Gators that we purchased. They were new when we bought them 10 years ago, so we've certainly got our life out of those vehicles. We've got 10 years out of them.
The rental from the cart revenue covers the debt.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That's a good point, Bill.
So they pay for themselves.
We bring in roughly $170,000 a year gross revenue in golf cart rental, and the debt is somewhere in the $50,000 a year range. So it's a good business for us to be in, renting golf carts.
Could you, in the note that you sent, and thank you for sending that, you mentioned a buyback program in 5 years.
Yep.
And I just wonder if you could explain that a little bit?
Yeah, what we asked them to do is give us a guaranteed amount that we would be able to trade them in for in 5 years from now, and that's what we did that in the last contract with this company, and that's the amount of money that we're getting now for the replacement of them. Mm-hmm. So we asked them to do the same thing moving forward. But actually, one of the things that we may not end up heading in that direction, because one of the things that we're talking about at the country club management level is trying to put into place, since we're starting off with all new carts now, is there a way that in 3 years from now we can handle the debt we have and maybe trade in 15 of them at that point in time too, so we could look at getting into a rolling.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was thinking about. If you think about like police cars or other things we do in the town, what we try to do is, replace, 20% of the fleet every year, maybe take a year off. And I wondered because, potentially, 20 years from now, you could be in a situation where you'd have to replace the whole fleet again.
Yeah.
So
that's something that
thank
we're
you.
looking at.
Thank you.
Any questions, please?
Just a quick question. So is this something that we did the last time we were buying them? Is
Same
Warrant
exact,
article, same
minus the
process?
utility vehicles, same exact process. Yeah.
okay.
Questions from the audience? Hearing none. I'll entertain a motion to recommend favorable action on Article CC.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you
Gentlemen,
so much.
have a good night.
Good night.
Article Z, somebody here from the planning board. I see someone. I see two people. Yes, please. Welcome.
I was hoping you'd be here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
got your wish. I'm Jennifer Gay Smith, 13 Bradley Park Drive. I'm a member of the planning board, and I am here to respectfully suggest that the Board of Selectmen include an article on the warrant that asks the town to accept the provisions of a paragraph of Mass General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 81U. Because we sent you a memo already with all of the backup details, I will give a brief explanation for everyone of what that means. This paragraph in the statute basically provides that if the planning board determines that expenditure of a security being held from a developer for the completion of a subdivision is indicated, up to $100,000 of that money may be spent to complete the roadway without going to town meeting. And this only works, we can only pursue this option if the town has accepted the provisions of Chapter 41, Section 81U. So basically, accepting the provisions of this particular paragraph of this statute would provide another tool for the town to ensure completion of the work in subdivisions as approved by the planning board, without needing to call a special town meeting or to wait for the next town meeting date. So this doesn't create any new authority, but it provides flexibility to the town when faced with an incomplete subdivision. The town is also not legally obligated to use surety funds, just to be clear, to complete the roadway, but if it wished to do so, having this option by accepting this provision of the statute, it would make the process simpler and allow the Board of Selectmen to use, as I said, up to $100,000 of the money without waiting for a town meeting appropriation. So ideally, this tool will never be used. We'll have subdivisions where the developers complete the roadways, and we would never even use this provision, and it wouldn't matter. But just in case, the idea that the planning board has is just in case this exists in the statute and we formally need to adopt this paragraph in order to have this tool in our toolbox if ever needed down the road. So the planning board discussed this at a public hearing. It was vetted by town council. Town council drafted the article language that's before you, and after thoughtful consideration, the planning board unanimously on January 11th voted to request that the selectmen include this article on the warrant.
Questions from my colleagues?
I just have a question for either Ted or for a few folks. Is this the first time we've utilized this section? And
We haven't actually,
This is a new section, so we're accepting this right here.
it would be
Okay.
new to us. It's not a new section in the statute, but we have never adopted it before.
Well, that was my question, I guess. Is there a reason why we didn't go that route in the past to
I'm not sure the section was available to us in the past. We also haven't had a lot of these issues prop up, but I do recall one where we did look at one about, at least 10 to 15 years ago, and I think one of the issues, and I think that's probably why the planning board and the community of planning boards want to do this, is that when residents want the roads fixed, they want the roads fixed. They don't want to wait till town meeting to go access money that we're legally allowed to access because the developer booted the job. And so that puts them in a little bit of an awkward position to say, well, we have the money, we could fix it, but we can't because we got to go to town meeting and ask them first. And I think this circumvents that process.
So you don't think this section was available?
I'm not sure.
So this section, I believe, was inserted in the late 1980s, I think 1987.
Some time ago.
The town has not ever accepted it, which is why we're before you today to be proactive, because it requires town meeting action.
And I understand why it's being proposed. I'm just trying to understand, is there some reason why we just didn't utilize this in the past, or?
Not to my understanding. However, as Jennifer said, it's a tool for the town to be protective of the residents, and we're having quite a development boom. We have a lot of residential subdivisions in various stages of completion, and it just seems like a thoughtful, proactive step to take. It only protects the residents, and it provides the town leaders another tool. Hopefully we'll never need it, but if you do, we'll be able to say that we have another option for you to pursue.
And I think it's also important to note that the planning board wouldn't be able to spend the money independent of the Board of Selectmen.
It sounds like
check and balance.
Sounds like a good tool, a valuable tool. And I applaud whoever found it recently. I know it's been around since the 80s, and it sounds like may have been something that we may want to look at in the past, but whoever picked it up.
It was presented to the planning board by staff.
Well, I appreciate that. That's good work.
Jennifer, you mentioned a letter. I don't recall getting a copy of a letter, and I guess what I would maybe offer to my colleagues, I I'm not sure I sufficiently understand what this article is asking for. I'm certain that if I read the memo and watch your hearing, I don't think I'm prepared to vote this right now, and I'd rather not take up the board's time in understanding this. I think you both have a better understanding of this at this point than I do. And what I would commit to you is that if I have any questions or anything, if I could contact either one of you,
Absolutely.
that would be very helpful. But could we perhaps vote on this on Thursday?
Follow me.
All things being equal, sure.
Okay, thanks.
I would just, in terms of my own experience with this, and Mary, or Council, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when the subdivision applications are submitted, accompanying it is usually a bond or a letter of credit. And that's put up in order to ensure compliance with the certificate of action that's issued with respect to the construction of the roadway. And there have been instances in the past where the developer has walked away from the project. And one of the tools that's used by the planning board to ensure that the work's done is release of the lots. That's where the money's made. But sometimes it collides with, the lots are all released, but there's still a punch list that remains incomplete. The bond or the letter of credit is the tool that's available. The bond is subject to defenses, the letter of credit isn't. But you can't compel a letter of credit over bond. But this is a mechanism. Obviously, I'm sure the board doesn't want to get to this point where it has to start enforcing its rights under statute, but these roads remain private until they're accepted at town meeting as public ways. And, one of the things that the board has gone through is, determination as to whether the waivers granted to construct the way are such that it really shouldn't be accepted as a public way. I'm getting a little far afield, but whatever time you need, I'm fine with that.
I think this is an area that you both are a little bit more familiar with both your town and your professional experience, and so I thank you. And I thank you for preparing the information, and I will review it before Thursday, and we'll vote. And if I have any questions or concerns, Mary, I'll give you a call. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are you ladies doing the easement issue, or no?
No.
Okay. Nice seeing you again. Have a nice night.
Thank you.
Okay, we're holding on that. Article AA, Sanctuary Community. Is there a sponsor of that here?
The mic about 10 inches in front of your mouth. Okay?
I'm sorry,
The mic about 10 inches in your mouth so they can hear you.
10.
It's directly right with it.
Okay. You'll let me know?
I will.
Okay.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
Identify yourself by name and address, please.
You're asking for my name?
Yes.
Yes. My name is Deborah Vos. I have a statement prepared. May I make it?
Sure, but
Okay.
where do you live, ma'am?
I've lived on Liberty Pole Road for 24 years.
Thank you.
When Hingham worked to become a no place for hate community, it made me proud. Recent developments have convinced me and many fellow Hingham residents, and many of them are here tonight to show their support, that we should solidify our stance as a tolerant, welcoming town by establishing sanctuary status. As lead petitioner, I ask that residents have a chance to vote on this issue at town meeting. An increasing number of Massachusetts communities are adopting sanctuary status to ensure fair treatment for all their residents. There are many misconceptions about sanctuary status. It does not protect undocumented residents who've committed crimes. Overstaying a visa is a civil offense. In fact, sanctuary cities experience lower crime rates because undocumented residents who do not fear deportation are more likely to report suspicious activity and crimes. I have copies of a sheet dispelling myths about undocumented residents that was already provided to the Selectmen, and on the reverse of that is a letter from the Mayor of Somerville, which is a statement from the Mayor of Somerville. This request is not a symbolic gesture. It is intended to make clear that Hingham supports the basic rights and dignity of all residents. And I'd like to continue and say, that I would like to give other people who are here to show their support for this a chance to speak, but I have met in the last 24 hours or so with both the chief of police and the assistant chief and 2 members of the advisory board, one of whom is here tonight, and they have helped me understand that the wording of this is problematic if it were to be adopted as a bylaw, and that there are other issues that they'd like me to consider, and the people who are here tonight to consider in amending this warrant before it is voted on at the town meeting. But I don't want to deny the people who've come tonight to express their support a chance to speak.
Are you requesting that we defer a vote then until that language can be clarified?
My understanding is that once the petition is submitted to you, that language can't be amended until the town meeting takes place. I'm willing to work with people and to submit.
It's a petition article, so once the petition has been set, then you're bound by that petition. You can't change it, and the petitioner, unless they get all the petitioners to sign, whoever signed, can't change it. So we've have a number of ways we've worked around things in the past, so I think if you can listen to the core issue of the discussion, and then you guys have an opportunity to make your own determinations of how you want to vote, and there's other ways to manage that process.
Right.
Ted, I just want to make sure I understand it. And you mentioned that if all the petitioners, they have to sign or vote to amend it, is that now, or is that town meeting, or how?
That's now.
So that's the only way it could be amended?
Correct. That's what we've gotten from council.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons why we really try to encourage people, if they're thinking of a petition article, and it can't always happen. We understand that.
As I've said to the
Circumstances don't
police
always allow
chief,
it.
rookie mistakes were made. I apologize.
But we want people to come talk to us and talk to our council, so our council can help write those articles so that they can have legislative actions. We're not taking a position on it. We're just providing the resources so that ultimately the legislative body has something actionable. We have some workarounds we can do on this. The selectmen have the ability to insert a warrant article at any point in time into the warrant, so we could rework an article and put it in. So there's a lot of different options, but I think you got to get to the core of the issue first.
Okay. What is the core of the issue, ma'am, then?
I feel that
As you see it.
I've been reassured by meeting with the police chief and the assistant police chief that Hingham does respect they do treat all the residents equally, and that immigration status is not something that becomes an issue unless certain circumstances. And there are so many scenarios that were explained to me, I couldn't possibly summarize them quickly enough for you. My understanding also is from something that I got from another advisory board member who's not here, but with whom I met last night, that Eileen McCracken has assured him that citizens who come for town services are not, I shouldn't say citizens, residents who approach the town, who come to the town office for services are not queried about their immigration status. However, what we're concerned about is the deputization, the federal government attempting to deputize our local town police to do the work that is reserved for the federal government, and taking away town resources and also interfering with the good relationships that the residents have with their local law enforcement people. And I feel as if, I don't know if it's appropriate for anyone else to speak. Some people who are more articulate about this than I am have spoken to me tonight, but I don't know how you want to, if you want to give any of them a chance to speak or not.
Okay, this is how we're going
Ask a
to...
question or two?
Yeah, sure.
Great. Ms. Voss, you mentioned that other communities have adopted this. I know Boston, Boston is a sanctuary city, but do you have a sense of other communities that have adopted this?
Do you mean, can I list them?
Or do we know?
Well,
how
Somerville
many?
is one. Brookline is working on one. Holyoke, Massachusetts has. Northampton has. Cambridge is also one. Any other? Quincy's working on it.
Okay.
Hull is going to be taking it up, too.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I had the sense that, that other communities in the South Shore, and perhaps some of you in the audience have been involved, that, that other communities may have similar actions on their town warrants this year.
It will be on the Hull town warrant. We didn't make the deadline for other towns. They were earlier deadlines.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question, follow-up to Mary's. And you may not know this, but I assume if we hear from some other folks, I'm just trying to make sure I understand the language, the gist of the language that's here. Is that similar to all these other towns, or do each town have a different kind of version of this type of proclamation or petition?
Yes, when we put it together, we looked at...
Identify yourself for the record, please.
My name is Erwin Nessa.
I can hear you at home.
When we put it together, we looked at other statements, and this is actually a simplified version. We looked at Brookline's, which is several pages long, so we really tried to just get to the heart of what the issue was. So it is essentially contains what other cities and towns contain, but a briefer and simpler version of it.
And, you know, I can only speak for myself, but as much as I'm aware of the issue in different communities that have spoke up on this issue, I got the sense that there were different towns or cities that used different language, that had different legal significance, and so I guess that my interest was piqued as to where we were potentially falling into that spectrum.
I think if Boston is probably the strictest from what I understand, and they preclude any cooperation, we're probably right in the range where we're saying, in Boston, if someone is arrested for a crime, they don't submit their papers, I believe, or their information to ICE. Most towns, if someone is arrested for a crime and their fingerprints are sent forward, I believe it goes first to the state and then to the feds. And if there is a federal warrant out for a criminal act, they will cooperate. I don't believe Boston goes that way. We're not suggesting that we not do that. That if there is a criminal warrant out, this does not preclude the town from acting on that warrant.
So, and I just want to make sure I understand it. So if somebody had a federal warrant, then you're saying that this wouldn't preclude the ICE or somebody coming in to pick up that individual from a court, so to speak, if he got arrested on a new offense under that federal warrant?
If we were a criminal.
Right.
Yes.
And so, using the word detainer, does that evoke civil and criminal, if you know, options? In other words, if someone has a detainer, an ICE detainer, or an immigration detainer on them, is that civil, criminal, both?
If you read
You know, we're gonna do this, but we're gonna do it in sequence.
Violation of immigration law is civil. So if this is ICE coming in for somebody just because it's violation of immigration law, that's a civil act. We're saying that the town would not cooperate, but if there's a criminal warrant or charge against them, then this does not preclude the police from pursuing and acting on that.
And I understood that, thank you again, but I guess the word, when I can wait till if someone wants to address it somewhere, the word detainer, to me, I wanted to make sure I understood whether it has any significance, you know, regarding this language, and maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but
I wouldn't know. Okay.
Well, I can say that Chief Olson did pose the question to me about, he described a situation in which somebody is charged with an offense in Hingham and they don't have appropriate ID. They turn to the federal government, other agencies for help identifying the person, and the charges are dropped. But in the meantime, the federal government expresses an interest in having the person detained because there is a problem with their immigration status. And that's a tough situation. I understand his concerns about something like that.
Okay.
Do you have another question?
Just one more question, because I'm trying to understand what's within the scope of this. And I understand that Some of that is still being worked right now. But I think you mentioned, and the language that we originally had mentioned that, and I'm just going to read it from the language we had, just, it says, "No department, agency, commission, officer, or employee of the town of Hingham shall use any town funds or resources to assist in the enforcement of federal immigration law." So I guess my question is what you're is part of what you're asking the town to do is to say that if the police department received a call, say from ICE, to say, there is someone in town, we want to see their status against federal immigration law, and that they would ask our local police for assistance. Am I correct that your article is asking that we say, we're not going to help you?
Correct, if it's specifically for
Or-
immigration.
I guess I'm seeing some people nodding their head and others shaking their head, and maybe that's something that we can draw out in the comments. I'm just trying to understand the scope, and I do realize that you've had a lot of new information in the last day, and that you're probably still processing it too.
I think what it centers around, if this might be helpful, is that if that ICE request is based specifically on an immigration status and not on a criminal act, then we're asking that the town not provide resources to assist ICE in that. If it's the person's in violation of criminal offense, that would be different.
I'd be interested at some point when you think it's appropriate to hear a little bit from the chief, so I don't know when you would like to do that. Thank you for the clarity.
Let's open it up to the public, and then we'll have the chief talk. Yes, ma'am, can you come to the microphone and identify yourself by name and address, please?
I wasn't going to speak tonight, but Dawn Sibber, 3 King Philip Path. I refer you to the Boston Trust Act, which would answer Paul's Gannon question about, I have to read it, about the ICE detainer, because an ICE detainer is not a criminal warrant. So, as stated here, so I would suggest that you read the Trust Act, which explains a lot of the language. But Boston does not, as Irwin said, respond to non-criminal if it's a civil. I can read this to you, but when local law enforcement honors ICE detainers, including those that target non-criminal aliens, well, actually, that's totally out of context. You have to read the whole thing. Sorry, I should have. But if you read it, it explains. And Irwin or Deborah mentioned that they do not cooperate with the ICE detainers, because it's a civil. Well, I'll let you read it, but I think it would be very helpful to you to read it and would clarify a lot of the language.
Boston Trust Act.
Yes, the Boston Trust Act, which was passed in June of 2016 by the City Council.
City Council, okay.
Yes. So, and I'm happy if you want additional answers to things about this. I know the person that wrote it, so I'm happy to help you. So.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak?
Hi, my name is Phil Bamus. I live at 6 Colonial Road in Liberty Pole. And I am not up on the specifics of the proposed language, but I do want to make it very clear that I strongly support the concept, in that I strongly believe that we should not be providing services or enforcing laws strictly based on whether someone is a citizen and what their status is. I believe that's not good for families. It's not good for the town administration. And it's not good for the town and its residents.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Melissa Smith. I live on South Street.
Good evening.
Hi. All right. So, as I understand it, a lot of why people are doing this is to protect local police departments and towns from both having police officers be drafted into the service of the federal government without being given any additional funds for doing additional work. And also the detainer versus warrant distinction is about, there's been cases in different towns, which I cannot cite right now, but I know that there have been cases in different towns where someone detained somebody on an ICE detainer and then got sued for unlawful imprisonment, and then the town had to take on those costs without any assistance from the federal government. And so my concern, I just finished Citizens Police Academy. I love our town police. I have gotten to know quite a few of them. These are human beings. They are wonderful people. Sure. And my concern is just asking them, so many of them already work 70 or 80 hours a week. You know, I mean, so many of them are asked to give, Narcan, right? They have to be EMTs. They have to do so many things. If the federal government wants an immigration enforcement agent here, we can rent them some office space somewhere, as far as I can see, and not try to make our guys do a million other jobs. I don't know. Police chief can talk too. So, but yeah, that's what I understand, is that this protects our town from a lot of different kinds of things and costs.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Anthony George. I live on Blaisdell Road in Hingham.
How are you, Mr. George?
I'm well. How are you, Paul?
I'm doing okay.
All good to see you.
Nice to see you, Anthony.
You too.
I just would like to point out the larger picture of what we're talking about here. And I think it just needs to be said. I think we're all living it right now, living in some interesting times. Did any of you attend the Women's March in Boston? 5 million people worldwide. What is that? I mean, I'm sure you have an opinion of what it is. And I can speak for hundreds of people that have gathered in Hingham, Cohasset, Norwell, Weymouth. We come together on a monthly basis because we are concerned about human rights. We are, we're feeling an attack today on, myself as a human being and the society that's around me. And my legacy, our legacy as Massachusetts residents, is under attack right now. The basics of running a town, of running a society. I was a sociology major. I learned so much of this, and I can't believe it's actually coming to fruition. I wish I was an attorney that could argue for the rights of human beings. But we as people have a chance, democracy has a chance to stand up and make simple laws and confirm simple laws of human rights. This is one of them. This is one that we're all being questioned on because of, honestly, a lot of us don't know where Donald Trump is coming from. And it's scary. And it's scary for people, and it's a human rights issue. So I'm just speaking on behalf of a lot of people, 5 million people worldwide. I mean, I'm getting a little dramatic about that, but seriously, we are those people. A lot of these people have been to all these protests. If you're paying attention, the attack on our human rights, when Mr. Trump is going to require down at our level to be looking at creating a law here of questionable purpose. I believe in the mayor of Boston. I believe in the mayor of Somerville. They're dealing with it on a larger level right now. And the mayor of Somerville firmly backs this status for his city. We're a microcosm of that, but we're in Massachusetts, and that's the heart of the matter. We want to see our town firmly stand up and say, we back human rights of all our people, of all our residents of our town and our society. Thank you. So I fully support the wording as stands.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Greetings.
My name is Kathy Swanson, and I live on Kimball Beach Road. It's 87 Kimball Beach Road. And I didn't intend to speak, so I really don't have anything prepared, but I guess I just want to speak a little bit from experience because I have taught English as a second language to immigrants, usually Spanish-speaking immigrants, and I know the fear that those people live in daily, how they try so hard to live under the radar because they're fearful for their lives. And I know that oftentimes we hear about hit-and-run accidents that are often caused by immigrants because they can't stick around to see if the person's okay because they're fearful for their own lives. And if they had a chance to call the police or to call an ambulance or to, report an accident in the way that normal people could, that they would do so too. And their attempts, as I say, to live under the radar is just so sad, and it doesn't help. Okay, it doesn't help. For them to cooperate with the legal system because they're fearful for their own safety and their own lives. Okay, so I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would anyone else like to? Yes, ma'am.
Julie Williams, Wooden Avenue, Crow Point, Hingham. Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. I want to just make this really concrete. I recently, outside Panera, stopped a Muslim woman wearing a hijab, and I said, I just want you to know I'm writing letters to the government supporting your right to wear the hijab. And she thanked me, and then she started talking to me. And what she said broke my heart, and it's still broken. She was outside the Hingham Public Library with her children. She said, I was surprised. Hingham's a really quiet town. Teenage young men drove by in a car and yelled expletives at me and my children. I told my children to ignore it. I said, you didn't call the police? And she said, no, I didn't call the police. I just ignored those things. And I told my children to ignore it. They kept saying, Mommy, did you hear that? And she said, I didn't hear anything. I said, do you know Maura Healy has a hate crime hotline? Maybe you should call that. Hate crimes are really underreported. And she said, no, I just ignore it. But thank you. And then 2 nights ago, I was at a meeting in Quincy at the public library, and there was a lady there, and she teaches adult literacy and goal setting to Asian American women who are recently arrived in the country, a lot of ESL and other literacy issues. And it's because it's held at the library, it's open to anybody of any race, but it's predominantly Asian American women and non-Asian volunteers who come to teach them how to read and write and, balance their checkbook and skills like that. And she said, they're not coming anymore. They're afraid to leave their homes. And I met a Muslim woman on the train, and she said every single day she hears jeers, slurs, swears, she's been spit on, and she's been hit. This is here. This isn't somewhere else. It's right here, right now. I grew up in Hingham. We didn't lock our doors, and we all helped each other. If a boat slipped its mooring in a storm, there were literally 3 men having a contest to see who could get to the boat first and be the neighborhood hero. I want people of all races, whether they just got here 10 minutes ago or they've been here and their families have been here for hundreds of years, to experience Hingham as I experienced it as a child. Further, I don't buy this us-them stuff. Just because my first immigrant forefather, although I do have a smidgen of Native American blood, my first forefather was an indentured servant on the Mayflower. The next group was James Cudworth, the founder of Scituate. The last group were the McCarthys, who came into Charlestown during the potato famine. That does not make me better than a Syrian or somebody from Yemen or somebody from Africa. To defy immigration as the backbone of our nation is to chop down the Statue of Liberty and leave it lying on the ground.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, some strong emotions on the subject, no question about that. Would anybody else like to say anything before I ask the chief for his views? Or at least his preliminary impressions? Okay. Would you folks mind going back there? So the chief can hear. Welcome, Chief.
Good evening.
Seat's nice and hot.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. It's always good to be on a hot seat, though, right?
What do you think?
I think this is a noble cause, and I think that it's really something that we're glad that we open up conversations and have with people. When this first came across my desk, I was a little bit concerned for just a couple different reasons. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it doesn't state whether it's a town bylaw, doesn't state whether it was a proclamation. I'm not really sure what process this is supposed to be presented at and what's the end result of this. And I will go back to some experience I had because I sat up here as a rookie one time, and I thought that we could just go through and institute a noise ordinance in a short amount of time. And boy, I made a rookie mistake. I realized that we didn't have the proper, or we didn't set it up properly so that everyone could fully understand it. We tried to move it into a time frame so we could get it to go to the town floor. There's a lot of questions here that I don't really have all the answers for yet. I did mention that I did submit it to the Mass Chiefs of Police to get some opinion from their attorney, but I haven't heard back from that yet. And there's a lot of questions that I still have. I mean, I think that we do, and for a long time now, through the domestic violence training and different trainings that we've gone through, we don't ask, if you're a victim of a crime, you're a victim of a crime. It doesn't matter where you're from or what your status is. And I understand that there are people that are hesitant to come forward for a lot of different reasons, and some of it is that I've also found is from the experience they know police from their own country. And if you were in a country that, you know, the police were a lot different than the standards and the objectives that we try to achieve, I would do the same. I wouldn't go to them. And, you know, I've been in areas that, and associated, I do have my son lives in Guatemala, and I've seen the struggles that they go through there, and they're trying to move through this, and I've seen a lot how the immigration system works, and I've actually had my family turn back and had to fly back to Guatemala, and I lost my money on the airline tickets because of an overstay type of issue. So I understand it's complicated, and I would really like to see this get the full attention and some of the public opinion, and so we can clear this, because I'm not really sure, and I explained, you know, we don't really know what detainers are, we're not really sure what some of these things are, and, you know, there's been probably 5 or 6 times that when we have had somebody under arrest, there was a detainer for various different things that the immigration was looking for. We contacted them, and they would say, hold them or don't hold them. I don't think we were ever in the position that delayed the process for more than 2 hours. It's just that, you know, some of them, and I'd hate to let somebody go that, you know, that may have had a detainer because they've been deported 3 or 4 times and snuck and come back in improperly. Those are the kind of mistakes we don't want to make. And so I think, and my other concern was that officers sort of need to know what they're facing. And so when we put something like this into place, it takes a while to educate and train officers on what it is. So I think I'd like to have more time to go over this and review this. I just think it's on a schedule that's a little too quick for everyone to comprehend, and that's sort of my stance on this right now.
Comments, questions from my colleagues?
I would just, a couple of things. First of all, to Ms. Voss, and thank you for bringing this forward, and for everybody coming tonight. Some of you may be engaging in our local government, some of you have done it a long time, for some of you it's kind of new. It's a little bit unusual to get a crowd of this size on something, and so, the fact that you're all in here in the seats sends a really strong statement that this is important to all of you, and in doing so, we understand that. I had heard some of the comments at the Maura Healey event last Monday, and I remember that one of the things she said in there was, things you can do, because I think it's a time when a lot of us feel kind of helpless, and she talked about engaging with local government, and so, so here you are, and thank you for that. And so just a couple of things, with every warrant article that comes before us, whether it comes from citizen petition or departments, we want every warrant article, when it comes to town meeting, to have put its best foot forward and putting on the strongest, most persuasive case that can possibly be. And in a lot of cases, we do a lot of vetting. I see somebody in the room from one of our town committees, and I'm reminded that a couple of years ago, we talked about a plastic bag ban in Hingham. And when the language kind of started out, we said, this is a really good idea, but we haven't kind of, the word we throw around is vetted it. We haven't really kicked the tires on it enough. And I think there was concern a few years ago that the article itself might get defeated, not because it's not a good idea, but because it kind of hadn't gotten vetted and gone through things. I think in a lot of cases when we have things that come up, we have really good concepts and ideas, but I think as Ms. Voss and some others are learning, sometimes the devil is in the details in the specific language. And it's been my experience that when we try to do that in a short period of time, or if we try to do it on the floor of town meeting, sometimes town meeting says no. Again, not because they don't like the idea, but because it feels like a lot for them to kind of digest at once. I think that's really important, especially now, because this, I don't know about my colleagues, but to me, this feels like new ground. As I think back on a lot of our warrant articles, a lot of our business is kind of within town, and this actually has some ripple effect to our state, to our nation, which is so important. And so I want to make sure that we get it right, and that when something goes for town meeting's consideration, it had the necessary vetting. At this stage, I would just ask us to be thoughtful about what we can and can't accomplish in the next few weeks before town meeting, knowing that we have other opportunities for it. And I'm not saying that to defer anything, but again, it's my belief that town meeting, we should be putting our best case forward. And so let's, in the next couple weeks as we work on this, let's ask ourselves if we're kind of ready to do that. So those would be my thoughts.
Thank you.
We should just clarify, though, that if we don't...
All right, yes, sir. If you want to be recognized, you can raise your hand, then you can come up. But I'm going to defer to my colleague here before we cycle it back to the audience.
I'm all set. He can speak. I don't have a comment just yet. Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to understand...
Why don't you come back up here, identify yourself for the record?
Sir, we can, the people at home watching can't hear.
George Hingham. Mary, you're absolutely right that a lot of us are experiencing this level for the first time. So could you just, it caused me to ask myself, if we miss it this time, is it a year, another year, and another town meeting later that we would have the opportunity?
As of now, it would be next town meeting. We don't usually, ordinarily, we don't schedule specials, but you could.
Yeah, so if we were to, take a little more patience and work through the details, it'd be a year from now that we'd have the opportunity to...
If there's no special in between, correct.
Okay. Seems like we're missing an opportunity.
And well, it does,
but
and
you're right.
I understand it does feel like a lot of time, but I would also say that, and and Ted probably has the most perspective on this, but I think when town meeting turns something down once, for whatever reason, kind of coming back and getting town meeting to change its mind. So it's, again, and I appreciate that, especially in these times where we feel unsettled and we feel inclined for action, that waiting that long, I fully recognize that feels like a lot of time, a long time to a lot of people. Again, I think you've gotten a lot of information within the last day or two, so I would just ask us as we use our time in the next couple weeks to think about, to sort of borrow a phrase, are we ready for prime time? And I'm not sure any of us can answer that question this evening. And, I would also say that, and I hope that you found that the resources of the town, that we're very happy to work with citizens to try to, help your local government get whatever piece of business you want out to town meeting. And so, we try to do that as best we can, and we will continue to do that.
Dawn Sibber, 3 King Philip Path. Question, a point of clarification. You mentioned before, Ted, about if all the petitioners signed something, the language could be amended. So my question is, if that's the case, and this group went back, if we could do that, and we could go back and work on it, work with the police chief, work with some of the other cities and towns, how long do we have before the process that we'd have to get your approval? Is that something that could happen before town meeting? Would it be too rushed? I mean, I'm wondering I don't know if we could get all the petitioners. What's the deadline?
Well, the deadline for the town warrant has actually passed.
Right, but for this
the
amendment
selectmen have the
process.
ability to include an article if they so directed me. I certainly could have council work with you on the article, draft it the way you felt the changes you needed. I think what Mary's speaking to is the time. It's February 7th today. Generally, things that came on towards the end of February, March don't do very well. I can remember when we tried to buy Whitney Wharf once. People to this day are still, or not Whitney Wharf,
Marina?
No, the Marina, actually.
26 Summer Street.
26 Summer Street, and it came on March 7th, and it didn't make town meeting, and $600,000, and everyone was kicking themselves, and I think 20 years later, they still are. The town doesn't, in my experience of being here for a couple of decades or more, the town doesn't digest the late night meals very well. You got to get it early, and you got to get it through a group of, 20 or 30 different people in different committees, advisories 15, they're, three here. So, I think Mary used the right word, vetting. Town likes to vet it, and they like to vet it, and then when they're done vetting it, they vet it a little more. And that's how the town doesn't make too many mistakes. So I think the longer you wait on that process, the harder it would be to accomplish that. But I think February 7th isn't impossible.
Ted, just to be fair to Dawn and the group, I don't think that was the question she asked. She asked if they go back and amend it, what is the deadline? And I just want them to get the answer, because
there is no deadline, Paul.
Well, when they go to print,
you can include a warrant up until, the Board of Selectmen can include an article on the warrant up until the point in time you send it to print, which will be sometime the end of March.
But if we wanted approval of your board or of the advisory board, would we have to have it done? Because I know they're meeting with the advisory board next week, but
generally the
can you come
advisory
back?
board makes its recommendations by the middle of March, because they want it to be included in the warrant.
Okay.
Now, they have sometimes used something called a supplement,
Right.
and they
I've seen that.
would make their recommendation at town meeting.
So it's something that if this group decide, I'm not saying, I understand Mary's point completely and yours, Ted, but it's something that this group could consider if they chose to, with the permission of the selectmen, to submit, and assuming they can get all the petitioners to sign.
Correct. The board would have to agree
Approve it.
to open the warrant and allow a new article to be submitted.
Okay. Is that something that's happened before?
I just want to make sure I understand it, okay? And I, obviously, a few folks.
Okay, thanks.
I know you mentioned about the Board of Selectmen crafting some type of warrant article, hypothetically speaking. I think she was asking if they amend it themselves next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and get all the signatures, and they proceed on their own with an amended article. Are we still looking at a kind of a deadline of when it goes to print at the end of March? And her question is, maybe we have to come back in front of the board before that, which I just ask if you could just
So
comment.
there is no, I'm trying to give you the answer, there are no finite deadlines.
Okay.
When the warrant goes to print, if you don't have a recommendation in it, well, it's going to go to print without a recommendation, pretty straightforward. We have a supplement. The supplement we print the day of town meeting. It's, it's a
Right, I've
piece of paper
seen it,
like
right.
that. We
You stick
inside,
them
we
in
can do
right
it here. And so the deadline for that would be, I guess, the day before town meeting. You need to tell me whether or not you want me to begin working with a group to begin drafting a warrant article, because the warrant's closed. So until I hear from you that you're interested in opening the warrant to include an article, that's the deadline.
Okay.
Right, that's the deadline, unless they take the other route, which is to have everybody amend the current article and sign off on it. That doesn't involve us, right, Ted?
No, because
No, I misunderstood.
No, the existing petition article as submitted can be, my understanding, Tom, I think we just went through this last week, it can be removed.
Right.
But it can't be amended once it's been
So that's,
submitted.
I think that's what Ted is saying, is that if you wanted to add, if they wanted to change the article language, you guys would have to submit the
Well,
article.
that's what I was told
The only-
before, but I thought, when they first brought this up, you had mentioned that if everybody signs an amended version.
That's to withdraw the warrant article.
Well, I have no offense, I don't know if they caught that.
Okay.
Yeah, that wasn't what I
So-
heard you say, but the bottom line is, you're saying the only realistic scenario is something crafted by the board.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to understand.
I do believe that is the only realistic scenario at this point in time.
And I would just add that Ted is correct, that there are in some ways no firm deadlines. It was my experience serving on the advisory committee that when you have a warrant article that doesn't have a comment and a vote from the advisory committee and the selectmen in the printed warrant, I just think that kind of makes it just kind of ratchets up the degree of difficulty in getting things approved, because I do think town, the voters like to kind of digest things. And I think one of the reasons why we discourage supplement articles is because it goes back to what I say, which is putting your best foot forward. Oftentimes, it can feel like a little bit of a fire hose. So I think that's a consideration too, which is that, around St. Patrick's Day, when the warrant goes to print, and statutorily, we are required, we can't have a town meeting unless the warrants arrive in people's houses by a certain date. So we really kind of have to put it out to press. So I guess the question is, in the next 5 weeks, can all that work be completed? And
I'd like to give my perspective on this because I've stayed quiet. When you walk into the back of my house, there's a sign that says "Help Wanted," and underneath it, it says "No Irish Need Apply." I fully understand the legacy of discrimination against the immigrant. I respect that. I have a family member who's an immigrant. It's green card status. I'm very nervous about that right now. It's a difficult climate. Having said that, I work in an urban court in the criminal session. I've represented immigrants for years. I've dealt with ICE. I see the consequences of a moral turpitude offense in ways that perhaps many of you could never know. Whole families broken up, people taken away, sent back to their country. This is a very difficult issue. The president has indicated he's threatened to withhold federal funds from communities that adopt this. We get over $1 million in federal funding from the federal government. That's a lot of money, ladies and gentlemen. I've talked to the chief. I'm satisfied that Hingham Police is not on a witch hunt for immigrants coming into this country. tomorrow morning I go into the criminal court and I'm representing a gentleman from Pakistan. If he was from America, if everything went bad, the worst he'd probably get is probation. But if it goes bad, he's got a one-way ticket back to Islamabad. So I truly do respect and appreciate the seriousness of what we're doing here. But I, like Mary Power, am worried about the ramifications of the language that you're asking us to adopt. And I don't quite understand it. And as far as I'm concerned, we don't hunt out immigrants anyways. So it's like, well, why are you asking us to do something, not do something that we don't do anyways? I get that. You're concerned, you know, this is a very tumultuous time. You know, the country's going through a major transition in the presidency. There's a lot of unknown. I'm not going to start bad-mouthing Donald Trump. That's not my role. But my role, I believe, is to signal to the community support, concern, maybe a little restraint. You know, we don't know how this is unfolding. You've rolled out a bunch of cities and towns with as heavy urban immigrant populations, where the dynamic is far different than it is in Hingham. You know, I don't see anybody of color in this room. That's just the reality of this town we're in. I know where there's some immigrants here. You know, they have represented somebody who was, you know, badly hurt by somebody who's in this country illegally, and they're right here in town. But that's life. I guess what I'm saying is, I think this needs to be thought out a little more. I really do. I just don't know what the effects of this would be on our community if we were to adopt this as stated, and, you know, to amend it and try to recraft it to anticipate what might flow from it right now. I'm just not ready to do that. You can shake your head, but I have a duty to the people of this town as a whole, and I have to respect that. So, I mean, that's where I'm at. I think that if this were to come back at some time in the future, you'd have a much clearer understanding of where the present administration is going with respect to its immigration enforcement. You know, I've been down to the detention centers, and you know, I've talked to a lot of immigrant clients that, you know, they're on a one-way ticket back. Some countries don't take them, so they just float. That's changing. Cape Verde today just entered into an agreement with, you know, Uncle Sam, and they're going to start taking their peeps back. And we have a pretty good immigration population from Cape Verde and some of the urban areas surrounding this part of the state. So I guess my point is, this is a very fluid situation, and we were provided with $1.36 million in federal funding. I don't know what Mr. Trump will do to Martin Walsh. I have no idea. But that's just how I feel about this. And to answer your observation about people leaving and fleeing the scene, there's plenty of Americans that leave and flee the scene after they hit somebody. Those aren't all immigrants doing that, ma'am, with all due respect. Yes. You can all talk. And
I just have a question.
Sure.
I'm Phil Bamus from 6 Colonial Road. Thank you for your statement. That helped clarify some things for me. One of the things that I found heartening about listening to the Selectmen was the chief's statement about how the laws are applied in Hingham. And I believe that you, Ms. Power, you said something similar about social services, the schools, etc. I understand that this kind of refugee status, this takes a lot of work. But it sounds like in the interim there are things that our town is already doing that maybe if residents in the town were more aware of the fact that the Hingham police don't do this, they don't really look at citizen status when they're enforcing the law, that the schools don't look at it, that our housing and social services don't apply that barrier. maybe if there was some way of making that known within the town, people who are hesitant to come forward and use the services that the town provides might be less hesitant. I'm just speaking of this. I still support the measure. I'm thinking of this more as of an interim step that clarifies for the residents of the city that of Hingham, of the town, how town laws and services are provided. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Again, Kathy Swanson, Pebble Beach Road. I guess just in response to what you were saying, and I agree, that was a very moving statement, and it certainly touched me. But your question about, why do we need this here in Hingham, and I think you're right, that we, don't need this. But I think the immigrant kid who may come here for a basketball game or a soccer game and maybe gets assaulted or picked on or maybe beat up or something, whatever might happen to him, he has to know that he can report that to the police while he's here in Hingham. He's here. He doesn't know, that we have a nice...
I personally don't think this will do that. I think, the integrity of the police force and the tolerance of the public for that kind of behavior is what's going to drive that. And if this town, it doesn't need a statute to behave well.
No, but I'm saying that, yes, we know that, and we appreciate that, and because we come from here, and we know our policemen, and we know how our town acts. But somebody coming from Quincy or Randolph or another town doesn't know that. And if it was clear that Hingham was a sanctuary city, then they would have the confidence of coming forward and reporting something that they saw or that happened. Without knowing that, how are they going to have the confidence that I can report this and not have to suffer myself? Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah.
I do, but I don't agree with you, with all due respect.
Okay.
I think that I've, too many times, I've had to deal with, criminal cases where the fact patterns include, immigrant witnesses. And some are just afraid to come to court. But you know what? That doesn't make them much different than a citizen. The criminal court is a scary place. The consequences are much higher for somebody who's an immigrant accused of a crime. Sure. Shoplifting can get you deported.
Yeah.
But it gets you probation if you're just an ordinary citizen.
That's right.
I totally respect that, but I think what's going on here is an affirmative declination to cooperate with federal law enforcement, and that to me is problematic. I'm very uneasy about that suggestion at this time. I don't know how the Republican president's immigration policy is going to fully manifest itself at this point. I don't think anybody does. And I think that that's being tested and determined by the courts as we speak by far brighter people than me.
All right. Okay, I understand. I taught in Quincy where there were lots of immigrants, and so, I just know, again,
Sure.
that fear that the kids have there, that they don't feel that they have a voice or can express themselves because of their status. And if they felt that they were comfortable here, because we were a sanctuary city, it would give them the confidence to speak up. That was my point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there are a number of things that you can do if you want to continue the conversation. If these folks decide they don't want to go forward with the article at town meeting and they want to wait till next year, as some of you have talked about, the board has the ability to draft policies and regulations to govern certain things that happen in town, and you could certainly explore certain areas of these. As you know, your board policies have less of an effect than ultimately a town meeting policy on governance, but perhaps there's some areas that have been raised along with the chief in dealing with notice and discussion and policies about who we are and how you want to represent the affairs of business in town.
That's a good idea.
Thank you.
Personally speaking, I think that what I'm hearing or sensing is a concern raised by the advocates for this as to how law enforcement is going to treat people who are immigrants coming through this town, whether it's as a resident or simply a visitor. Yeah, I have no problem at all. If that is a course you wish to take as an interim measure, I think we're going to know in the next 12 months pretty clearly where the Republican presidency can go on this immigration issue. The courts may constrain some of the measures he seeks to implement.
And board policies can be adopted by this board at any time.
Correct. And a lot of times, board policies, and I'm trying to recall an instance of this, but I do know in our field, board policies frequently are the stepping stone to becoming town bylaws, et cetera. So.
Yes, ma'am.
Julie Williams, Wooden Avenue, Hingham. Could you please be so kind, since I've tended to do more national activism, to explain what a board policy is and how much power or clout it has? Thank you.
So the board is entitled to establish policies and regulations to manage the affairs of the town. So they can create a policy on whether it deals with employees, ability to, off the top of my head, smoke in cars. All right, we have policy against that. I'm not catching me off guard here, but essentially they could adopt a policy on how the police department would address certain aspects of their job. And they're the force of regulation at that point in time. The departments that work under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen, which include police and fire, would have to abide by that. The Selectmen could not pass a board and policy that would deal with the school department. The school department is governed by the school committee, and the school committee has sovereignty over the rules and regulations to govern the school system. But those are types of policies and how it comes about.
And Ted, would it be fair to say, just to add to that, that the board policies, any subsequent board can take those policies up, they can change them, they can add to them, they can take them away, so it's they're not as permanent as something, once something is approved by town meeting, until a subsequent town meeting sets a different course. So I think the difference here is in terms of permanence.
Yes, absolutely.
If that's a word.
Yeah.
And isn't it also, this is excellent, I thank you for engaging us in this conversation, and I think this is terrific. I mean, we didn't come as adversaries, right? We came as...
No, we're on the same team.
Same team. So this is terrific conversation. Don't we all agree? Honestly. And it's such an important issue. That which we're talking about now is very fluid. It sounds like you can change it, even if we did meet and do a, what are we calling it? What is the name of it?
Board policy?
A board policy. Subsequent change can be made at what time? Any time?
Yeah.
48 hours notice.
You're telling the police, this is how the board wants you to change your behavior? I mean, that's a terrific...
we don't even have to assume there's a change necessary, because from what I'm hearing...
Oh, sure.
We might just be recognizing.
In general, Paul, I meant in general.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like an excellent
So the benefit...
meeting ground for us to engage in this important topic, because we feel your townspeople are telling you we want to, obviously take an action, and I think that, honestly, I think that's an excellent...
The benefit here is that a year can feel like a long time.
Right.
But I think what you're hearing from this board, in the spirit of being helpful to you, is we're just not sure this is ready for a town meeting vote. So this is a step. I think the other benefit to the step of a policy is, as Mr. Healy said, I think many of us are, I think a lot of what brings us here is what we're anticipating, what could happen, what might happen. And the advantage of policies is that they have a little bit more flexibility, and you don't have to wait till another year of town meeting. And, the one thing that I might ask, if this is a route that we take, I think between now and, the middle of March, as we're concentrating our efforts on the warrant articles, I think after the warrant leaves this board, would be the, the right time to sort of take this up. So if this is the course we want to take, I think we might ask you for a couple of weeks to let us get the warrant in order, and I think that you'll find that we can be more focused on this.
And I would also ask that, decide who you want to interface with us. We can meet with all of you if you'd like, but if you'd like a smaller group, Tom or I are available, and we could start working with you tomorrow.
I'd like to thank Mr. Alexiadis for that suggestion. I mean, I think we all ultimately want the same thing, just a respect for the integrity of all humans. Just how we go about doing it is a bit of a challenge right now. The Ninth Circuit could do something to affect this, and that might be superseded by somebody greater than that. So, I mean, it really is a very fluid issue right now, and I'd personally be inclined to see if we could do this in policy as opposed, because what I really would like not to see is that this get to town meeting and get voted down, because that would send a bad message. So, I mean, if there's a way to do this in a collegial, collaborative way, let's try that. So, yes, ma'am.
Julie Williams, Wooden Avenue, Hingham. I'm just happy to hear this. I'm actually not in the immigration group in South Shore Action. I'm in the environment group. But obviously I feel very passionately about this. But I wanted to defer to them since I'm not part of that group. But what I was thinking, because I've done some marketing, it's a very exciting time to do outreach and public education, but it's also very difficult. One person only reads fake news on Facebook. The next person takes the New York Times. The next person is getting all their news from Twitter. Another person is a Boston Globe person. Another person only reads the local paper. It's actually very challenging right now to educate people because audiences are so fractured. If we have this policy, the group can go to the community and say, hey, this is what we're working on, and we want you on board because it's really an American ideal, and it gives us time for the town to learn about the issue. So I'm happy. I hope I didn't step on any toes, and I'm happy the direction this is going in. And I want to thank you all. I've learned a lot tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
How would you like to leave this, folks? You want to send it for a policy, develop a policy on this, working with the chief and town administrator? That work?
Sure.
That work?
Yeah, I'm inclined to go there, and I'm sort of looking in the audience, but I'm getting a sense that we're comfortable with that approach.
The only thing I'd suggest is you have to take a vote on the action on this article. So I would
You
suggest
don't have to take
no
it tonight, though, also.
Right.
Okay,
I would vote to take no action.
I wasn't going to say anything. Dawn Sibber, 3 King Philip Path. I can't help myself. So just to, Julie mentioned, we have a advocacy group that has formed on the South Shore called South Shore Action. And we have about, I think, last count, over 300 members. And it formed after the election. And we are working on actions, and we have subgroups. So one of the groups is immigration. And so Erwin and Deborah and some others have worked really hard on this. And so that's what you were hearing. So I think that it's sort of up to them, and I really appreciate what you've suggested. I think it's a wonderful idea, and I think other communities, I think Brookline has sort of started and worked up, and I think other communities have done that, and I think it's a wonderful idea, and I think I would think that it's probably the
It's
best,
my-
yeah, because,
It's me, but
well, right, to have it fail,
Rose was the proponent, so.
right, so
it
she
makes
needs to, but I think that, I just wanted to explain to you what the South Shore Action thing was and why, so, but thank you, I really appreciate it, and of course, it's going to be really important to work with the police department going forward.
I have my cards out, ready for you.
All right. Yes, Ms. Foss.
Deborah Vos, 31 Liberty Pole Road, and I am getting hearing aids. I'm serious, I really am. Sorry about that.
Quite right.
I think on behalf of the people here and on behalf of the committee I worked with to bring this matter to you, I formally accept this offer.
Thank you very much.
It's a better result than we expected, so thank you. I mean, a more immediate result. Thank you.
Ms. Voss, how many signatures did you have on your petition?
31. And I can contact all the people.
So we have two paths that I think we can take here. One is that if all 31 of those people sign it, then you have the ability to withdraw and it won't appear in the warrant article. Otherwise, it could appear, and what we've done in the past is when that's happened, the advisory committee comment, and I see a liaison in the room, typically kind of says, as this issue was being put together, the general feeling was that it was not ready for town meeting consideration. The proponents agree with this, and that if it appears in the warrant, it would probably have a no action recommendation. But typically what we find is if the comment is prepared to sort of explain that, town meeting typically dispenses with it pretty quickly and just takes a vote and moves on. So perhaps if you could be in touch with Mr. Mayo about, kind of how you want to proceed.
I personally would try to get the signatures to withdraw.
Absolutely.
I do think that
optic for you.
I think it would not be a burden to get in touch with the 31 people and actually get them to sign it in the time frame that you've mentioned. But I understand that that's another avenue if we need to take that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mrs. Voss, I have your contact information. I'll send you the language you would need on the top of the petition article to have them sign to remove it.
All right, well, I think at this point.
Details.
Kind of talked this issue through for tonight. I'd like to thank you all for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Expressing your views.
Thank you.
Your concern for your fellow human man
Thank you, Glenn.
and woman.
You're welcome.
All right.
I'm sure there's some different political parties.
You know what?
Thank you for coming in tonight.
We can only bottle it, huh? If we can only bottle it.
We've got a little bit more business.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in.
You're quite welcome, ma'am. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Always good to have a teacher in the house.
Thank you. No, it was great. You guys are wonderful.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. All right.
Always concerned about hot mics.
Yeah, but I like how that worked out. Okay. Next matter on the agenda is acceptance of easements.
Your bailiff needs to explain this one, sorry.
ED. Okay.
Yay. DD. What do you need?
ED. This would be the easement issue. This is a little bit of a housekeeping article, I think. This is an article that allows, it was a recommendation of Real Estate Council a number of years ago, gives the town the ability to accept easements, not to sell easements, but to simply accept easements. From time to time, that's necessary in the layout of roads. We had an issue once where we had to wait a whole year to go back to town meeting to accept the easement, and someone wanted to give us a little piece of drainage, fixing a problem up in the South Hingham Industrial Park area with the developer. It's only for 1 year, too, by the way.
I don't have any questions.
Entertain a motion to recommend favorable action on Article DD.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. A couple more votes here. I'll entertain a, well, wait a minute. Sorry about that. Ted, you're up. 5-year forecast.
5-year forecast. Not quite the same audience, but not quite the same subject.
Has nothing to do with the subject.
Exciting to me, but...
$1 billion and the room's empty.
Oh, boy.
In front of you tonight is the forecast. If you notice in the upper left-hand corner, we've dated it version 1.4, dated 1/31/17. That was the last meeting of the revenue forecast group last week, and we made a number of changes to the forecast, and I will take you through them. The forecast, first of all, includes the votes of the Board of Selectmen regarding the town budgets. It also includes the vote, or the budget of the school department as submitted to the school committee. And I believe they've submitted copies to advisory and selectmen too. So again, we include just that number. Another expenditure change, the regional dispatch assessment is going to be coming in about $80,000 lower. This year, we've redone the formula with how the overall assessment won't change, but the assessment to the member communities are going to shift, and Hingham will be assessed $80,000 less this year. We've taken that off. I know you didn't vote that, but I was pretty confident that you would be willing to take that off since it's the assessment. I've also increased state aid pursuant to the governor's budget. House 1 has come in. The Department of Revenue takes House 1 and produces a version of a cherry sheet that would look like the distribution we would receive. And then we examine that to see if we think all of those aids that the governor has added will come to fruition. It's a judgment call. Our judgment is that they will. I think we are in a we're certainly not in a down economy. I would say we're in probably slightly up, but certainly not in free fall. It's usually those periods of free fall where the legislature overrides the governor. Generally speaking, the legislature usually adds to the governor's budget. At least that's what we've seen in quite a few of the past years if we have a good economy. So I would suspect that that number will be consistent. And potentially even go up a little higher as the legislature begins its budgetary hearings. In the area of local receipts, we increased ambulance revenues. Ambulance revenues dropped precipitously 2 years ago and came back very strong last year. The swings are over $400,000. And so while we didn't add all of that back, we added a substantial amount. I think the number should be on your page. We added 125,000 back, bringing the number from 975,000 of collections to 1.1 million.
What page are we on to?
Actually, if you jump to page 3, I'm just walking through one line on that.
Sure.
In the ambulance fees, we collected $1,375,000 in fiscal 16. The problem was in fiscal 17. We collected substantially less, $797,000. The year before, we were at $920,000, $30,000, and in the previous years, we were in the upper 900s. We're trying to examine the anomaly that occurred that year and see whether or not the return of the revenue in 16 is now the new point and the consistent point. So while we did raise it $125,000, we think there's a little bit more there. We've asked the fire department to go back and look at their runs on a month-to-month basis and try to get some insight as to what happened and whether it was just a Medicare reimbursement, which is, we believe, the significant part of the decrease, where Medicare started dropping their reimbursements and we did not increase rates to compensate. Also, you'll notice in the revenue under the meals tax reserve stabilization, we've added $178,000 to that, and that is the bond premium from from previous issues and how we allocate it in this session. Overall, this brings your budget to, right now, for the current year, $1.1 million in deficit, which, of course, is not where we want to be. I have identified about $1 million of one-time revenues, and I will give you a list of that for your next meeting. Some of those are still waiting to develop. Most of those are building permits, and we do believe they will be pulled, but until they actually are pulled, we have to be concerned about speculating on their use. All of them would return to fund balance at the end of the fiscal year, and so I think there's a path for you to balance your budget this year. More importantly, I think if you look at the out years, and that's really what this forecast is designed to do. Yes, we're budgeting in one given year, but trying to understand the actions you take in that year, how does it affect your out years? And as you can see, you have a slight deficit in 19, along with 20, but essentially we're starting to see them go away as we move out. You'll maintain your deficit through 21 in very small dollars compared to what we've seen in the past, at least the past decade. So I think, again, symptomatic or a product of your finances and the strong finances that you find yourself in.
Did I get a question?
Sure.
I just want to make sure I understand it. I know we talked before about some permitting fees coming in, pretty sizable amount. I don't know if that was the...
Those are the one times I'm talking about.
Right. Did they get reflected on the 2017 budget, or do they get reflected on 2018?
Well, they won't get reflected anywhere on those budgets. They'll show up in the actuals when we collect them. So next year when we do this forecast, you will see on page 3,
Yep.
if you look in the actual column,
Yep.
and you go down to license and permits, you will see $1,377,363. When we collect those $1 million of permits during 17, along with all the other permits, they'll appear in that line.
Right, so it does affect the actual 17 budget.
Correct. We know we're going to bring them in. We've gotten one already from Linden Ponds. We've been told that Avalon will pull their permit in March. We've been told that the development in the shipyard, A.W. Perry is working on, they will pull their permit in March. And so you'll see all those permits actually come in during fiscal 17. I suspect that if the Alliance project gets permitted, that project will pull its permit during 18. And so we're looking at all of those as essentially one-time revenues because they will never pull a permit again. We don't want to incorporate it into our annual revenue stream. And so essentially it is the quintessential one-time revenue.
However, if you look at, when you think about that, potentially we could use those dollars, for example, for some of our capital funding. And as Ted pointed out, if you look in the out years that those numbers are improving, you're always a little worried about if you use a lot of one-time money, are you just kind of creating a problem for the next year? The advisory committee used to call that a structural deficit.
Yeah.
That's where the examination of the out years comes into play. And if you think about it, when those projects then come online and they become part of the tax base, then that becomes permanent revenue. So in some ways, this one-time money is serving as a bridge until that happens.
Correct.
Ted, if, one of the things as we think about a list of the one-time revenue would be helpful. I think it might also be really helpful for us. We stripped out a lot of the additional requests, but, and I think we talked about it earlier in the week. I think of things like the benefit coordinator as a necessary thing to implement the healthcare savings. I think about, do you want to true up your snow and ice to be more reflective? So if there's a way we can capture that, because, as we talked, and I just wanted to, fill you both in, I want to make sure that those additional requests that we have remain on the table as we start to narrow down this budget deficit. If we have room to not only close this gap, but for some other things, I want to make sure, in particular, that benefits coordinator is still out there. So
We'll be getting a list soon anyhow.
yeah, I think, you know, we don't need it right now, but at some point, I think it would be really helpful to have it.
Okay.
Do you see if those permits are not, some of those things aren't coming in until March, what's your sense of when you might recommend we vote the budget?
Well, my sense is those permits will come in sometime in the March time period, but I think the two can be unlinked.
Okay.
You know, one of the advantages of having a 20% fund balance is that you have some cushion to be allowed to do something like this. You know revenue's coming in next year. You could spend your existing fund balance because you know it's going to be replenished. We did that with FEMA 2 years ago, I think. We've done that several times over our course. If you don't have any fund balance, then you really can't do that. So that's one of your advantages.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Ted.
You're welcome.
Yep. Okay. Moving on. At this point, we do have a couple of votes. We're almost concluded with tonight's meeting, so I'll entertain a motion to waive the permit fees for standby electrical and plumbing work at school buildings and property.
So moved.
Second.
All's in favor? Aye. Entertain a motion to proclaim Saturday, February 11, 2017 as Lincoln Day in the town of Hingham.
So moved.
Second.
All's in favor? Aye. We have a proclamation. It's a bit lengthy, but I like Lincoln Day, so I'm going to read it. Whereas the town of Hingham was settled in 1635 by a small band of Puritan pilgrims, many of whom came from Hingham, England and environs, and whereas among the descendants of those original settlers were two famous American public figures who shared the common family name Lincoln, as well as a common heritage, and whereas it is a long-standing Hingham tradition to honor and celebrate their birthdays, General Benjamin Lincoln, a lifelong Hingham citizen and hero of the American Revolution, and Abraham Lincoln, a giant, our 16th president and the towering figure of the Civil War. And whereas we honor and celebrate the lives and deeds of the two Lincolns because of the indelible legacy of community building and preservation that they have left for us, and whereas in this year, 2017, we pay special honor to 4 centuries of our citizens, those famous like Benjamin Lincoln and Abraham Lincoln, and those unknown to history, who worked in a myriad of ways to build and sustain this wonderful community of Hingham and the broader communities of state and nation. And whereas the preservation of community is a perpetual task in which each generation must fully participate, now, therefore, we, the Board of Selectmen of the town of Hingham, do hereby officially proclaim Saturday, February 11th, 2017, as Lincoln Day. We urge also that as many citizens as possible join us at the Old Ship Church on Saturday, February 11th, 2017, at 11 a.m. for a patriotic ceremony of celebration. And finally, we urge each citizen to take to heart the examples of the two Lincolns and those of 4 centuries of Hingham citizens, and we urge each citizen to participate in some concrete way in the strengthening and preservation of this community of Hingham and the broader communities of state and nation for the generations which will succeed us. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That is a great time, ladies and gentlemen. The history celebrated on that day is just a real pleasure for the town. I strongly encourage you to participate. Join us. If you haven't come, you should come, even if some of you here haven't seen the old church from the inside. It's a great take. Okay, Selectmen reports. Mr. Mayo.
I'm good, thank you.
Didn't we do that?
I don't know.
You did that one
Oh,
first.
sorry. Very good.
Mr. Alexiadis.
I'm good. Thursday.
Got it. Mary?
I just have one thing. I received an email a little earlier today, and some of you who took the boat, whether it was to work or to the Patriots Parade, may have noticed that the new intermodal facility had a soft opening today. And so that is open for business, and as many people know, that is actually named after Seaman Herbert Foss. We will be having a commemoration in May, when the weather is better, when the Foss family can join us. Details will follow. For those of you that are inside the facility, you will see an area where a sculpture will be displayed, and we will send out more details as all that gets firmed up.
Thank you very much.
Just briefly, I guess, I would want to echo Paul and thank him for reading that resolution. I think being someone that was fairly new to the town, going to Old Ship and being actually, in the ceremony and that took place prior to the gathering at Old Ship, and then listening, I think it was Jim Conroy a couple years ago, giving us the history of Lincoln, being someone who was very interested in history myself. It was very enlightening, not only to learn some national historic facts, but also to get a better sense of the local flavor and the importance of the Lincoln name and many others in the town. So I would also recommend that folks, if they can stop down and just partake for a part of that ceremony, and it's really worthwhile. Other than that, I think I just want to say that it was one of the happiest days we're going to see Patriots winning that Super Bowl. I have to say something only because it was a comeback for the ages, and we're very lucky to have them, and we're very lucky to have that type of a victory. It makes us, I think, appreciate sometimes that, and I hope folks do, that you never give up, because hard work and a little bit of luck bring some good results, and so we're very happy and congratulate the Patriots on their victory.
I'd like to thank the residents that came in with that sanctuary article. I thought the conversation was extraordinarily respectful and open-minded. I wasn't really quite sure how I was going to handle all that beforehand, but I like the way it unfolded, and I just wish everything could go that well. It's going to snow on Thursday. We have a meeting, but I'm not going to be silly about it. If the weather's really bad, we'll probably just double up at some point in the near future. We're trying to stay on a pace to get the warrant articles done in a timely manner. So with that, I'll say goodnight, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everyone.